Of trucks is not a new idea at all. This entire industry, because it is fragmented, has had hundreds and thousands of brokers who've been doing this with a notebook and a pen. Then they started doing this with a WhatsApp. Then they started doing this in some countries, maybe on Meta. But they are all digitizing and hustling at the same time. The main improvement comes in that, hey, can you create convenience? Can you save money? And ideally, can you do both? That's where we focus on primarily. That, hey, the guy who, the company, industries that want trucks, they pretty much want a flexible and reliable. Now, when you're a fleet owner, you have 1,000 trucks, you can't be flexible. Because you can't have the 10 trucks reaching the company and he says, hey, I don't have loads today. My inventory is running behind. I'll load tomorrow. He doesn't like that. So you don't get the flexibility from your fleet owners. The small brokers, you need 20 trucks tomorrow and you might only find 5 of them around.
Hi, Gaurav. It is such a pleasure having you on the pod. Thanks for making the time.
Really, Pat, always a pleasure meeting you and connecting with you. How are you doing today?
Very well, thank you. You've built the largest digital freight forward business in MENA. And I'm curious, to unpack a little bit kind of the origin story of TruKKer and how you get into this and what is really, the problem that you're solving for within the MENA region.
Sure, man. So TruKKer happened to me by accident. I'm not a techie. I wasn't looking to get into the technology business or was very far away from the startup world. So let me tell you a little bit about how this whole thing happened. I was a consultant for 12 years. I left India when I was 21 to study in the UK and then continued working there. Had my first job in Edinburgh. Within a few months, I moved to London because even though Edinburgh is one of the most favorite cities for us, me and my wife, but it was too small at the time. And moved to London. We got into delivery of very real estate projects. And I moved to Dubai in 2007 for the Atlantis. Like everybody knows who has been to Dubai, they know the Atlantis and the Palm. So that was the project I moved here for. And subsequently, over the next 4 or 5 years, I was lucky to be part of some of the largest, and iconic projects in the region. I was the director of one of the theme parks on the island for which I used to travel the world. At some point, before starting Uber of trucks or TruKKer, I used to be one of those people who used Uber in probably 15 cities in the world. And then that was my exposure to technology. And I was very, amazed how real estate was behind and how other things like mobility, especially Uber and ordering, food and things like that was becoming. And this is 2013. So to keep a long story short, I was under pressure to, finish my consulting life and somehow move back to India for my family business. I'm the only child for my parents and had a very comfortable upbringing. And at some point, I had to be called back to India. Wasn't very happy because, I'd lived as an expat for such a long time. I wasn't very happy and I was looking for something. And we were on holiday at that time with a few friends. And somebody had a truck problem. Okay, to tell you quickly, he's a big manufacturer, childhood mate of mine. And he was having a truck problem. And I was like, hey, why is there no Uber of trucks? And I realized 2 days of Googling after that, and me anyways trying to find something that I would like to do, realized that trucking industry, like agriculture and construction, are one of the 3 largest sectors in the world. And one thing that is common across the world, somewhere less, somewhere more, is the huge fragmentation of the sector. Okay. And the third thing, it was common to construction, because I came from construction real estate. So I knew the consulting part of the gray matter of the industry and then the construction contracting part, the not so gray matter of the industry that is primitive. And I found out transportation like the same common thing, extremely primitive. Average workers do not get a chance to get a university degree or a college degree or any professional degree. And same with the truck drivers. But difference was trucking has the highest entrepreneurs out of any sector. If you haven't received a good education or you haven't inherited money to start something, you don't have a farm where you can become a farmer, and you don't want to work for somebody, so you don't want to be a construction worker, you can pretty much get into driving a truck, and then your income depends on how hard you work and how honest you are and all of those things. So it's one of the fastest route to entrepreneurship across the world as a profession, especially long-haul trucking. That was quite interesting, and just a few days of Googling and, there's enough NGOs and other people working for the sector. So it gave me that aspect, and all of them somehow large of the great checkbox is a large sector, large problem. unsophisticated was a good problem. Hey, that's why Uber is existing and beating the average cab guy because they're unsophisticated and this guy has sophistication of technology and non-digitized. So they don't really, like now you have WhatsApp groups and I think soon AI will replace everybody. But 2013, 14, 15, so this, what I'm talking about is 2015. There was no really Uber of trucks of an idea. There was Convoy that had already started, but those things I came to know after taking the plunge. So it was a combination of this, from wanting to look out for something and a problem coming out of a dinner conversation. And then lucky for me, I connected with Pradeep, my co-founder. He's the chief technology officer of the company. Pradeep is the techie, childhood friend of mine. We were both friends since 8 years old. And I think that's one of the reasons why TruKKer we're able to execute is because of the friendship. It's like family, like brothers who can't leave each other. So there's a lot of those things which created TruKKer. 9 years now, we are a full truckload focused business. Trucking is so large. If we talk about TAM, everybody will tell you tens of billions, hundreds of billions of TAM, right? So we focus on the full truckload and we focus on the long haul cargo. So we do not so much solve the problem of a laptop delivery or the last mile e-commerce grocery in trucking or vans. We much more are the trucks that you see near the ports, carrying those big containers. So those are the types of trucks, and we do more long haul, which is, our shortest distance would be pick up tomorrow, delivery. So we pick up today, delivery tomorrow. And most we do from Turkey to Kazakhstan. If the weather is bad, it can take 25 days. If the weather is good, it can take 15 days.
You mentioned a lot of interesting pieces there on the logistics industry and how you're plugging into with TruKKer more on kind of the, I would say, like solo entrepreneurs in the long haul. But before we talk more about that, curious on how your upbringing is affecting the way you've scaled and how you're running TruKKer. All of us, we have some PTSD from our childhood days. How do you think your upbringing in India has influenced the way how you're building TruKKer and the leader you are?
I learned from my father, my grandfather, different things. I think a lot of them impact the way I run TruKKer. For me, when I started TruKKer, this whole idea of losing money for scale was new. Because neither did real estate transaction advisory have that in my professional learning. Neither did I ever witness that in my family. My dad told me once that, hey, what is this business where you leave in the morning with $100 and you come back in the evening with less than $100? Because that's not the business I learned, or you should have it. You should come back in the evening with something more than $100. I think that kind of financial prudence is still a very strong guidance in principles for my business. TruKKer's never gone into growth at any cost, take your eyes off the unit economics. All of those, I think, have only helped us. As much as a business is very much a different story for each business, the same business in another country with another set of circumstances would require a different kind of a narrative and something else will work there. So you can't compare. But I think the execution focus, financial prudence, those are very, very important. And then obviously, if you have a strong team, that's another great thing I also learned. I saw people depending on other people and then how they delegated, how they relied, trusted. I learned things like that, hey, listen, if you find a team member who's 7 out of 10 in smartness, but 10 out of 10 in trust, versus another team member who's 10 out of 10 in knowledge, smartness, and everything, but 7 out of 10 on trust, choose the one who's 7 out of 10 in everything, but 10 out of 10 on trust. He can put himself, he or she, but you can't do that with trust. So those are, fundamental things which I use. And I think the other thing in India, which is quite unique, regardless of how privileged, not privileged, a small city, big city, India is extremely competitive. I think probably Latin America is similar, China definitely, maybe more. I think these countries, if you're brought up in your teenage life, early life, early business life. I never made money in India. In fact, when I started TruKKer, the idea came and I wanted to do it in India because India is that much bigger. But then it was very high friction. But for you to succeed in India, you need to be that much faster, hustler, that much faster execution-wise, that much more fundraising, and all of that. So I think India also makes you much more competitive when you get out in the global scene. You typically expect yourself working harder than everybody else just out of your DNA. I strongly believe when Musk says that, hey, if you are smarter and you can work twice as hard as the average guy, you're going to achieve 4x more results in the same year or during the same period. So I believe that. I expect people from the subcontinent and from emerging markets have that much higher capability of doing the extra mile, and that's very important.
Yeah, absolutely. I always say the emerging market founders are the better founders because you get to navigate.
I don't know about that. I think everybody's doing their best.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's hard to achieve anywhere. But being an emerging market founder, you got to navigate so much more adversity and volatility. So that makes you, by definition, in my opinion, more resourceful and more disciplined. But going now deep in on the industry, right? That TruKKer is digitizing. It's fundamentally fragmented. It is archaic from a digital angle. Curious how you went about putting these parts together. Ultimately, it's a marketplace, right, that you've built, connecting both sides, right? So you often come into the chicken and egg problem there. How you put kind of the flywheel together there.
See, the three things I mentioned to you, which were fundamental to me, that the sector is large, unsophisticated, and not digital.
Right.
And I think in this aspect, if you look at the role of technology, it pretty much needs to come and form a layer. I think I recently have started saying that AI is a big technology reset, because now the layer which had to be complexly coded, multiple input parameters had to be processed for multiple different kinds of output parameters. All of those you can pretty much put in a basic algorithm that keeps on learning and improvising itself. So I think that's the big reset that AI would do. People not having to create multiple apps that take 2 years to get to perfection. You could get to perfection in 6 months after launch. What I realized that any business, and especially in our business in transportation, you must have the right to make money. As a broker, I think truck aggregation or Uber of trucks is not a new idea at all, by the way. This entire industry, because it is fragmented, has had hundreds and thousands of brokers who've been doing this with a notebook and a pen. Then they started doing this with a WhatsApp. Then they started doing this in some countries, maybe on Meta. But they are all digitizing and hustling at the same time. The main improvement comes in that, hey, can you create convenience? Can you save money? And ideally, can you do both? I think that's where we focus on primarily, that, hey, whether the company, industries that want trucks, they pretty much want a flexible and reliable. Now, when you're a fleet owner, you have 1,000 trucks, you can't be flexible. Because you can't have the 10 trucks reaching the company and he says, hey, I don't have loads today. My inventory is running behind. I load tomorrow. He doesn't like that. So you don't get the flexibility from your fleet owners. The small brokers, you need 20 trucks tomorrow and you might only find 5 of them around. You can't go out looking for the remaining 15. So as a company, you have these problems that you want somebody flexible, but also reliable, and you can't get both in anybody. And that's where the aggregator comes in saying, hey man, you want 5 trucks tomorrow and 20 the day after and 0 the day after? Cool with us. So that's one. And by the way, you don't have to pay any price premium. Those are the main value add from the shipper. It's very simple. And I think simple is great for us in our business. People are very simple. And from the supply side, the average fragmented small transporter, whether it's an individual or owner of 5 trucks or 10 trucks with a few brothers, or even a 50, 100 truck owner. These guys, we take away 2 problems from them. So yeah, man, don't focus about your sales and business development. Because you can't open off. You're sending a truck which is going 15 days away or 5 days away. You're not going to open up offices to bring cargo back. You are invariably going to have some unsophisticated way of finding revenue back, depending on another broker. Instead of that, you get regular jobs on the platform. And second, simple is no bullshit payment. Where the market broker is paying you $100, I might pay you $95. But once you agree on a $95, there's no bullshit in that. From you doing a good job and pocketing the $95. So you don't have to worry about bringing demand, and you don't have to worry about how to finance that demand. Because typically that's the other constraint of companies, that they can't process invoice and payments every day. If you're a company even moving 100 trucks a month, you want an invoice, and that has to go through your purchase department, and then has to go through the finance. So we completely make this frictionless. Somebody wanting to, now AI is capturing even demand on WhatsApp. The clients who don't even want to go to the email and send you an email, forget about going into your app and putting the demand. They like to WhatsApp. We're capturing the same demand, and it's an omni-channel communication. But continue to add on the convenience part of it,
And when we look at how you then expanded and scaled this across the MENA region, but also beyond, you're operating in markets such as Poland and Kazakhstan. Curious to unpack a little bit more kind of that expansion playbook. Once you had the flywheel in place, how you then replicated across markets. I guess on MENA there were certain synergies and kind of like extending the distances on the trucking side.
When we started, we launched in India, and this whole mega TAM was a big important thing. That I think at that time India was 180, and now it is a 200 billion TAM. And when we moved to the UAE, out of considering India to be extremely high friction, and you had to really, one of the reasons why we folded up India was you had to expand across 10 cities to really offer a product to a client. So when we came to the UAE is much more linear. But then UAE has the, first problem that any startup in the UAE would have is that the TAM is limited. We are lucky to have one of the busiest ports in the world and one of the busiest airports in the world and a high exporting country, but it is still maybe a state of India. So expansion into Saudi, and when we do long haul trucking, it became as a requirement of the product. So I feel that a lot of our expansion has been driven more as lanes. You should look at TruKKer saying, if we dominate all cities of UAE to Riyadh, Jeddah, Dammam, Neom, Jubail, Yanbu, better than anybody else in the market. But if you consider that we dominate these large truck market in UAE, Saudi, then that's wrong, because the large truck market is, we're still not 1% of the TAM, even in UAE or Saudi. So within our network, so the growth into another market came as a function of being long haul. Okay, so because I'm sending so many trucks from Dubai to Riyadh, I need to find cargo in Riyadh to come back to Dubai, all the way to Egypt. So now we do cargo from Oman all the way to Egypt, or Egypt to UAE, and all of these long haul truck lanes, like I was telling you about Turkey to Kazakhstan. So that was one of our playbooks, was to follow our cargo. So except for, say, Kuwait and Qatar, these are two countries where we send a lot of cargo in, but we don't have offices there because we don't see a lot of cargo coming out of there. Most of the exports of Kuwait and Qatar are by sea or by pipelines. So it's not much industrial cargo coming out from there. So that's how we've expanded. And it came with the complexity of launching with the right set of people. Finding people is extremely important. Our business is, as much as it is standardized with the technology layer, it is extremely localized with operations and customs in those countries. So Kazakhstan, paperwork, or Turkey, Kazakhstan paperwork is very different to a Saudi, Oman transit paperwork. So that's where the customization and I think the scalability gets defined there. I do not have to learn and train and keep training new people as I join into the network. The technology pretty much keeps everybody in check. The documentation and how it is, what confirms a completed transaction is all defined in the technology layer. So that's how, and then finding the right people to run teams is extremely important. I think that's something which we've sometimes gotten right, sometimes gotten wrong. And the other thing about geographic expansion, which our management team strongly focuses on, is unit economics. A lot of times you would expand into a region, sometimes out of peer pressure, by the way. So that's happened to one of the countries we expanded just right after Corona, where it was investors were talking about it. At that time we had 11 active competitors and 3 of them had already entered the country and we were the last ones. And then it was expansion for the wrong reason. And then 6 months later, we were the first ones to come out. But we realized that there's no long-term way of making net income. If you do not even see it long-term, and I am a firm believer of the Excel sheet must work, but you can't obviously take all your decisions from an Excel sheet. You must have business gut feeling and strong value creation must be visible and listening to your clients, what they want. But sometimes Excel sheet doesn't work, so it's a red flag, right? So we came back in 6 months and we shut it down. But global expansion for us is not a target. We are very happy in the region. I think we're expanded into quite unique parts of the world here.
You had these different realizations along the way. There are certain markets that are more suitable than others. India had a huge TAM, but you have incredibly complexity and you need to have like these multi-cities. Is it better when you have a market where there's one big city, one big hub and kind of like a hub and spoke kind of system, or where you have like really dense population? When you think about really scaling this and exploring a TAM, like oftentimes I have it on conversations with other founders, mostly on fintech, is how much you can cover actually a TAM. And it's interesting when we look at, emerging markets versus developed markets, you can capture only like a tiny percentage of TAM in the US or in Europe, but still be a huge market, still be incredibly attractive. Or you can say we can actually penetrate the market a lot more and capture more significant market share. How does it play it out for TruKKer in this way in terms of market dynamics there?
So see, I think from a trucking perspective, the TAM is so large that you have to be careful of what you choose. Because of the scalability, if you compare TruKKer as a business size to any of the incumbents in the region, we are probably equal or bigger than anybody's full truckload. There are players who are doing full truckload, express, courier and all of that. I think we're probably larger than any of the largest in terms of the full truckload business. Now, this comes up with a few criteria that we have to consider. So how much do we champion a product that we are in? If you look at cross-border movements, then we pretty much no global or local incumbent would be able to have the same amount of supply and be able to provide them at the prices that we offer. So we pretty much, say that, hey, we champion the cross-border lanes, and then we do domestic lanes where clients are, buying both of them together. How much of the Saudi domestic volumes do we capture? A very small part. Are there people who are bigger than us? Yes. But then is there anybody who can do better servicing from the UAE or Saudi Jordan or Saudi Kuwait lanes? No. So I think that's where you have to choose. And then within that product, then we also then try and segment, hey, which kind of end market. Within that, we can do petrochemicals, steel, metals, construction material, but also pharmaceutical, dangerous cargo, oil and gas. So we are, right now in that phase where we are gradually expanding within the full truckload long haul product, but increasing more end markets. So far, we very much service only general cargo. We don't touch pharmaceutical. We don't move ice creams. We don't move, arms and ammunition or explosive cargo that requires certification. So we don't do those things. But then within the general cargo itself, I think we can keep growing for 25-30% CAGR for the next 20 years.
You've also acquired 2 companies along the way to go into other geos. Talk a little bit about that, and especially post-merger integration is always on the mind of a lot of people. So how did you go about acquisition and then later on kind of the integration piece?
So first acquisition was more, out of opportunity. So we were looking to expand we were sending a lot of cargo from Turkey to Europe. Like I explained earlier, we were like, hey, we're sending a lot of cargo there. We need to monetize the trucks coming back, and the volumes that they can bring. So we were looking to expand into Poland. Poland happens to be like the traditional trucking hub of Europe.
Yeah.
And a lot of, 20 years ago, I would say majority of the truck drivers in Europe were from Poland. Now I think there's a lot of Romanians and Latvians and other people, but now the big transport companies are Polish, right? They used to be German, many years ago, but now they're Polish. So we expanded to Poland, and there was another company which was in the same digital freight space who were struggling with unit economics or, fund allocation to Poland. So we were able to acquire them, and it was a sweet deal. So, without going into details, it was a great deal for TruKKer. And we were able to move and expand from rather than going from 0 to 1, we got straight to 20 plus people. So that was one of the transactions. Post merger, it was pretty much more of an adoption. The teams were onboarded as our processes, our systems, with customization of what requires to be done in Poland. And similarly, we recently acquired another company in south of Turkey, which is in the freight forwarding space. So TruKKer pushed into freight forwarding in 2024, and we launched it across UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey. And in freight forwarding, primary focus for us is the sea freight and the air freight. And we realized that acquisition would add a lot of knowledge that otherwise the teams did not. So this was, to be honest, the first, inorganic growth where it was a sizable team that we brought in. And then we used to try and fill the gap that, okay, maybe they don't even have the financial resources, reporting standards, accounting standards that we have. So those were all done for a 6-month period where both teams pretty much performed together. Clients were onboarded together, operations team were merged while the paperwork and all of that was happening. Again, these things, everybody would have their first and then they would do their multiple M&A. I think every M&A is different. But I feel for us, the most important function for us towards looking in organic is somebody has to add long-term operating value add. I think the technology value add, I don't see now there is much that remains in the world that you have to acquire a company only for the product. I think if you're able to more acquire a solution, either somebody have a solution that you don't have and you would complement yourself with that solution, or somebody is solving that solution in a better way in a market that you are not able to solve in the same way. So if those things work out, I think then the financial work happens because you would work out the solution. I think the operating synergies are the reason why you're doing an M&A. I think then you don't have the risk of doing the M&A for a financial reason and then trying to figure out the complementary or the non-complementary things.
And when we look at the numbers today, like how many trucks are you serving? What's when you look at the scale that you've achieved today, just to give folks a little bit of a sense on the maturity that TruKKer has achieved today?
So if you look at our business right now, we service about 1,500 active enterprise clients across 9 countries. These range from the largest petrochemical producer to the largest steel producer, aluminium, heavy commodities, soft commodity, the global FMCG. All of our clients who are working with us across 3-4 countries. And from a supply perspective, we aggregate 70,000 plus drivers that belong to, small and medium-sized and large fleet owners and also individuals. Within this, we are loading every day across the platform. We full about 1,500 big trucks that are getting loaded for various destinations.
So when you take that further on, you look at the next 3 to 5 years for TruKKer. What do you think is the long-term horizon you're seeing, and how to realize that ultimate vision that you want to become one of the largest freight forwards globally?
I don't have any such global ambitions, but I definitely, feel strongly about dominating our part of the world. I think the GCC, the Middle East, even Turkey, CIS, I think the global East and the global South, we fall in both being in the Middle East. So we're right in the middle with the transformation that is going on in Saudi Arabia, and I'm witness to how that country has transformed and continues to transform at the same pace. And the UAE being the pretty much the beacon of growth. When I came, it was like, hey, Dubai wants to be a Singapore. I think it's much better than Singapore now. And then I think we're lucky to be in this part of the world. We would continue to consolidate our position here. 3 years, 5 years is not a long time. I think 10 years is probably a long time. But 3 to 5 years, we continue to improvising what we do. For example, Syria, from the time the sanction went out, we are quite keen to understand, and some operations have already gone into, one person has already traveled there. So we're opening up, hey, how do we solve problems of long-haul cargo movements? Now Turkey to Saudi had to come on a vessel, go through the Suez, or if you're moving something from UAE to Turkey, again, it has to go through the Red Sea. Now you can truck it through Syria. And that used to be, for hundreds of years, was a great trade route. Syria was on the trade route, and that's opening up. So we continue to feel that we will increase and strengthen our foundations here, connecting the world to the region. And we welcome clients who are serving the region, supplying to the mega projects that are getting built here like nowhere else in the world. And then I would like to quote the Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi that, the region is definitely punching above its weight. And we would love to be part of that impact.
Certainly. Being part of that growth potential that the region is capitalizing on, I think is incredibly exciting in an industry with a huge TAM where you continue to grow on the back of it. Logistics is always going to be a growing market, right? As we look at, just the general shipping volumes globally. Before we close, there's 3 questions in a fast speed round I'm asking everybody on our podcast. Would you be ready for those 3 questions? So first one is, who's an entrepreneur you admire and why?
Elon Musk. I'm sure, thousands and millions of entrepreneurs. I completely admire the guy's ability to go all in. And, read these, or I heard it on Audible, the recent book, on Musk, and how it talks about his demon mode and how he gets shit done when he's on his demon mode. I think every entrepreneur has that. When I come for these outlier meetings, I feel very good about not being the guy with that mode. I think so. There's a lot of stuff that the guy does. He doesn't need to work for anything. I like that about myself. I don't need to work for anything. I like to work for the success and the solution that I'm building.
Independently on where people stand politically, nobody can argue about his entrepreneurial success, for sure.
Yeah.
Second one, in one phrase, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received and would like to pass on to others?
One is, I think it goes with a lot of cliches about resilience. I think resilience is the single most important thing. You will keep hitting the wrong solution, which you might think is the right solution, and then till you realize it's the wrong solution. So that's a very critical advice that I have received. I've seen people succeed out of that. I've seen mediocre people achieve great things. I feel I'm probably a mediocre guy. And then I think resilience can pop up a lot of gaps. What you don't know, you can learn. What you feel is out of reach can become, just need to keep trying. I think that's the single biggest one that I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always interesting though, the resilience, and just to double click on this, because we always say like entrepreneurs have to be resilient, they have to push through. But at some point in time, you might realize, gosh, this is not heading into the right direction. So how do you balance being like resilient and like overly going for something which you have to have as an entrepreneur, but at some point in time also realizing, gosh, this is not going anywhere, we have to quit this or pivot?
I personally feel it's got nothing to do with resilience. I think it's calling yourself out. I think it's more like, hey, if you are going to lie to yourself, then you're resiliently stupid like a donkey. You don't want to be a resilient donkey, right? You need to be. If you find you really wanted to get something solved and your solution was wrong, nobody wants to pay for it. Nobody wants to pay as much as you thought they would like to pay for it. But,
right.
Then you need to stop and resilience is okay, then what will work? That's why I feel the Excel sheet kind of mind, that it doesn't work on an Excel sheet, sorry, that's the red flag at the start. Then it has to be something extraordinary for it to work out. So are you extraordinary? Is the solution extraordinary? I think most people would find out themselves if they're honest to themselves.
So true. Appreciate that. And last but not least, 3 key words that describe a successful business in your opinion.
Profitability, longevity, or business continuity. Or it has to be profitable. It has to be longevity or business continuity proof. It should not be replaced by the standard, what you learn in MBA. It's very important. It must be able to change, we adapt, keep adding value. And the third one is people. I think if you don't have the right people, regardless of how much of you might be Elon Musk multiplied by 10, but sorry, Elon Musk can't do shit if he doesn't have the set of people that he has. So I think it's the people is very important.
So much in there, Gaurav. So much more ahead for TruKKer, I'm sure. Thanks for making the time to join the pod. Is there anything else you would like to share with the audience before we close?
No, listen, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure, and I enjoyed my conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for listening to the Enthusiast Podcast.